Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Graves, Chairman DeFazio, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss our recent body of work on airline consumer protections. My remarks today are based on our reports issued over the past 3 years on a variety of airline consumer issues. Specifically, my statement today covers trends in DOT's data on airline service, airlines' actions to improve such service, and what is known about passenger complaints and airlines' practices on accessibility and discrimination issues. Our work found that the quality of airlines' operational performance has generally improved over the past decade. Rates of denied boardings and mishandled baggage have dropped precipitously, and on-time performance has remained relatively steady with some modest improvement. Airlines have, for example, reduced involuntary denied boardings by investing in technology to better predict passenger no-shows, increasing compensation to volunteers to give up their seats when needed, or reducing or eliminating overbookings altogether. They have upgraded baggage tracking technology and have instituted practices to mitigate the impact of delays, such as tracking flights that are at risk of being chronically delayed, improving communications with passengers through text messaging updates, and voluntarily compensating some passengers during extended flight delays. Nonetheless, when delays and other disruptions occur, they can be costly and inconvenient for both airlines and passengers. Airlines are required to compensate certain passengers who are denied boarding involuntarily and to provide refunds for canceled flights. Beyond those requirements, however, DOT officials told us that airlines are not obligated, though they may choose, to provide accommodations for flight disruptions such as cancellations and delays, unless specified in airlines' contracts of carriage. In our work looking at the impact of airline IT outages, our review of selected airlines' contracts of carriage showed variation in the types of accommodations provided and under what circumstances they will be provided. This can lead to confusion and frustration for some passengers who may have incurred
The gentleman move the microphone a little closer to his mouth. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely, and may feel that they have not been fully compensated. While operational improvements have been a positive for consumers, data on complaints tell a bit of a different story. Complaints received by DOT have generally increased over the last decade relative to the number of passenger boardings by about 10%. Flight problems and baggage issues are consistently the top categories of complaints. Complaints related to accessibility and discrimination, though far fewer, but data shows that disability-related complaints to airlines have steadily increased this decade, from about 19,000 in 2010 to about 30,000 in 2017, an increase of over 50%. And there has been an uptick of discrimination-related complaints reported to DOT in the last few years. Of course, the number of complaints may not reflect the full adverse experience of passengers. For example, in our recent work examining the accessibility of aircraft lavatories, while there may be few complaints, we noted that some passengers with limited mobility may take extreme steps to avoid using the lavatory altogether, such as severely limiting their food and fluid intake in advance of the flight, and others may choose not to fly at all. More generally, we have found that complaint data are inherently limited because a substantial portion of dissatisfied individuals never complain and are therefore not represented in the data. Our recent work on accessibility and discrimination issues has focused on airlines' efforts to provide training on these topics to their employees. And we found that all the airlines we examined had developed initial and recurring training in these areas, though they have been reticent to provide some of the details to us. With respect to non-discrimination training in particular, we found that airline trainings varied and that not all airlines covered topics like implicit bias, which our work found to be a key principle to include in such training. Looking forward, the 2018 FAA reauthorization bill contained a number of provisions for DOT with respect to consumer protections, including provisions to develop leading non-discrimination practices for airline training and to establish an airline passengers with disabilities bill of rights. These efforts are ongoing. DOT has also recently taken initial steps to establish rules related to the accessibility of single-aisle aircraft lavatories, which has been something that they've been working on since 1992, I might add, and regulating service animals. In addition, we have open recommendations to DOT to improve its ability to target and measure its consumer protection compliance activities, including getting feedback from consumers on its efforts to educate them on their rights. Chairman Larson, Ranking Member Graves, this concludes my statement. I'd be happy to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McGee,